KUAM News Headlines is presented by Calvo's Insurance, serving Guam for 80 years. Matson Navigation, serving Guam and Micronesia for 20 years. The all-new 2018 Kona by Hyundai, available at Cars Plus. IP&E, fueling excellence. McDonald's of Guam, I'm loving it. And King's Restaurant, located in Tamuning and Dededo. Always open, always local.
The Public Safety Oversight Chairperson wants the feds to investigate DOC. Details ahead in this week's Chris Barnett report. Plus, lawmakers are back in special session trying to find a solution to the government's financial woes. And one story of how a local company is using their talents to raise awareness in an effort to save others from harming themselves. Half a day and good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Drug smuggling tonight by corrections officers, inmates brutally beaten, others accidentally released on more than one occasion, and a detainee recently murdered. Now the prison's oversight chairperson wants the federal government to step in.
Senator Talina Nelson says she wants the Department of Justice to investigate apparent civil rights violations at DepCorp that have been happening under Director Tony Lamorena's watch. As Chris Barnett reports, two former DOC directors sound off about leadership at the prison.
Two former DOC directors speaking out, saying the bottom line, the buck stops at the top.
Certainly things have gone wrong under his watch.
The way the prison operates is greatly impacted positively or negatively by the management of that prison.
They're talking about DOC Director Tony Lamorena. Several corrections officers served by Lamorena with adverse actions as suspended. Those officers responding by arguing they weren't properly trained and management's inability to maintain facilities contributed to conditions that allowed detainee Manson Isar to be beaten to death by a group of men confined to the Agatna lockup.
Somebody shouldn't be killed or murdered in prison, and if you don't do enough to protect them, you may face some civil liabilities in the long run.
Well, later down the road may come sooner than you think, as DOC Oversight Chair Senator Talina Nelson says she'll write a letter to the Department of Justice detailing what she calls civil rights violations under Tony. Two former DOC directors speaking out, saying the bottom line, the buck stops at the top.
Certainly things have gone wrong under his watch.
The way the prison operates is greatly impacted positively or negatively by the management of that prison.
They're talking about DOC Director Tony Lamorena. Several corrections officers served by Lamorena with adverse actions as suspended. Those officers responding by arguing they weren't properly trained and management's inability to maintain facilities contributed to conditions that allowed detainee Manson Isar to be beaten to death by a group of men confined to the Agatna lockup.
Somebody shouldn't be killed or murdered in prison, and if you don't do enough to protect them, you may face some civil liabilities in the long run.
Well, later down the road may come sooner than you think, as DOC Oversight Chair Senator Talina Nelson says she'll write a letter to the Department of Justice detailing what she calls civil rights violations under Tony Lamorena's leadership at the prison. A source at the prison choosing to remain anonymous because of a gag order issued to employees told me Manson Isar, quote, got what he deserved.
I don't agree at all.
Isar facing trial for allegedly raping a woman with Down syndrome.
Now we have capital punishment at our own prison. He has a responsibility to make sure that bad things don't happen to them, no matter how they got into prison.
Director Tony Lamorena firing back, saying problems at the prison are nothing new.
These directors, for them to say that these weren't going on during their time, then they've had their heads stuck in the sand.
Inmates did not run the prison during that period of time. I'll guarantee you that.
While both of the former directors say sometimes people without relevant experience can be successful in leading a government agency, in this case, Lamorena and Deputy Director Kate Baltazar's lack of experience could be one of the reasons for the crisis at DOC.
A director and a deputy with no prior correctional background, and I thought that's maybe handicapping him a little bit. I had a lot of law enforcement background before I became director of corrections, and I was not prepared to be director.
Running the prison requires quite a commitment from leadership, and you can't help but question how committed leadership is when Deputy Director Baltazar is currently campaigning as a candidate for senator. Klitsky says that prevents her from fully focusing on matters at hand at the island's prison.
Absolutely. Being director of corrections, being deputy of corrections is more than a full-time job. There's no time left over for anything else.
When the time comes, based on law, she will depart from the department and, greatly missed.
Baltazar supposed to step down once she files her official candidacy, but she's already had at least one fundraiser that was advertised on a DOC employee WhatsApp chat. Less than a year ago, the prison's federal consent decree was lifted. It's all been downhill since then, but that didn't stop the governor from claiming all was well with DOC in his State of the Island address.
And your lieutenant governor worked alongside our attorney general and the speaker, thank you, speaker, and fixed the problems at DOC.
Problems that still exist. At the DOC oversight hearing, Internal Affairs head Anton Uggan sounded off, frustrated by conditions.
There's no cameras there, all right? So the equipment doesn't even work. The locks are broken. The locks, we have a lot of things to take care of.
Lamarena, however, saying perception is not reality, and the public hears about problems plaguing the prison because they're not being swept under the rug.
We've become, more transparent. And with transparency comes the appearance of failure and negativity.
So do the two former directors think Lamarena should be replaced or fired?
That's a tough question. I thought maybe he should have, but he's already withstood that test, and he's still a director, so I think he needs to just continue.
It's the governor's call as to how long he would leave any director on the job in the face of what might appear to some, many, or most as misconduct.
If the governor feels that, I should be replaced, then, I serve at the pleasure of the governor.
For Guam's News Network, Chris Barnett reports.
Stop your kids already!
And that is mobile phone video that has been circulating on social media depicting an apparent showdown between an off-duty police officer and others involved in a fight near a local middle school. It reportedly happened just after 3 o'clock Wednesday near Benevente Middle School up in Dedido, as investigators say the officer saw 3 people fighting, and that's when he called in the disturbance and stepped in to try and control the teens. The officer also noted that one of them had been hit by a baton. 2 people were arrested as a result of the incident. 18-year-old Corey Salas is charged with aggravated assault and disorderly conduct, while a 13-year-old boy has also been charged with assault on a police officer. He was taken to the Department of Youth Affairs. There has been no word on what may have caused the fight.
2 teens who escaped from the Department of Youth Affairs cottage homes Tuesday night are caught. DYA officials say a 13-year-old and 15-year-old client ran away from the facility. The officer assigned that day was preparing for a change of shift when they realized the pair were gone. Both are status offenders, which is a juvenile charged with an offense not criminal if committed by an adult. The 15-year-old self-surrendered to police Wednesday morning. The second teen was picked up in Agate not long after. Both are on lockdown status and face additional charges for beyond control.
Well, the reduced 32-hour work week for public sector staffers that was supposed to start on Tuesday has been postponed. Governor Eddie Calvo rescinded his executive order issued Wednesday after consulting with Attorney General Elizabeth Baird Anderson. She advised that a 90-day notice to staffers is required prior to implementing the policy. She further clarified the administration must follow furlough procedures spelled out in the DOA personnel rules and regulations. And now these include the development of a plan setting the sequence of employee classifications to be furloughed. Calvo said that if the process takes more than 2 weeks, he will be forced to take more drastic measures. The governor's team is revising the timeline to complete the furlough process. For the time being, senators spent much of the day in and out of yet another special session discussing proposed measures that could help finance the government's $67 million shortfall as a result of federal tax reforms. But once again, lawmakers decided to recess. They will meet again Friday morning at 10.
The night leading up to Thursday's talks included back-to-back hearings. Senators going into multiple special sessions well after midnight.
Nick Delgado gives you a recap.
a financial face-off.
This crisis is real.
Governor Calvo's call for senators to go into special session at 7 p.m., then at 9 p.m. was his move to get them to find a financial solution after lawmakers defeated his bailout bill on Wednesday. The talk over a pair of measures to bump up the sales tax by 2%.
I would move that we adjourn this special session, subject to the call of the Speaker, and allow for the public hearing process to occur and for the committee to report the bill out of committee.
One introduced by Senator Fernando Esteves, the other by Senator Josen Augustine. Both measures referred to the Committee of Finance and Taxation.
It's basically similar to the BBT, but it's in a lockbox where nobody will be able to touch it. But I honestly believe we should all wait for the hearing so that everybody can see the whole setup.
But that move wasn't enough to satisfy the administration.
This is to avert 32-hour work weeks. This is to avert furloughs, layoffs. This is to keep our fire stations and our police stations open. And it's about thousands of people tonight being able to sleep soundly. They're not.
A late-night watch party for Calvo and his fiscal team at Adelup after again ordering senators go back at midnight to hear his latest compromise.
But I need lawmakers to make law, and they're not doing it.
I think we can already see that there are a lot of questions in this one bill that I don't know. I don't want to be tied, Mr. Speaker, when we are in this kind of situation where we need to come up with a solution. And I think we need to have as much flexibility as possible under these kind of circumstances to come up with flexibility. I'm asking the governor not to call us in the middle of the night. I don't think that's conducive to anybody's coming to a solution.
I don't understand why we can't just address this. I respect the fact that we need additional input. But my God, it isn't compromise when you're forcing your will upon another party without their consent.
But the majority wants the proposals to first go before the public.
I understand the needs of 13,000 government employees. There are also 60,000 other workers outside and other taxpayers.
Throughout the evening, senators could be heard on session floor debating the governor's move on social media, a call to action as he posted their cell phone numbers, urging the community to call or text them directly.
That's probably a desperate measure to get us to react, but I'm committed to working. Families are feeling a lot of anxiety right now.
Meantime, one thing is clear: whatever they decide or how long all this may take, the administration confirms they do have enough money to make payroll, adding they are trying to stretch the resources for as long as possible. Reporting for Guam's News Network, Guahusinik Delgado.
Now, the governor's executive order did not exclude the Department of Education, but an Education Board work session did reveal that any drastic changes first need board approval. Only then could they be given 30 days to act.
Carmen Talahi has our next story.
DOE says next week is just another normal school week.
The earliest the board could vote would be March 13th at a special meeting, and so prior to that we'll be status quo. There won't be a 32-hour work week for DOE next week.
According to the superintendent, it's status quo until the board meets to approve.
They would have to take an affirmative vote, and then based on that, I would then be charged with implementing whatever their decision is. And that would again start with a notice period of 30 days prior to implementing any furlough process, including a shortened work week or a 32-hour work week.
DOE has been working hard to cut costs, asking for the flexibility to make the cuts where they see necessary, especially since it is the middle of the school year.
With all that, we're asking for the flexibility to be able to make cuts where it makes sense while we can protect our classrooms. So that's an ongoing discussion. I know we weren't exempted through the executive order, so we are preparing for any scenario, including the worst case scenario. We'll be working with the governor, and we're going to hope the legislature and governor come to an agreement on some revenue relief for the department so that we can minimize the impact on our employees as we're entering a critical time of the school year.
Reporting for Guam's News Network, I'm Carmen Victoria Terlahi.
DOE's legal counsel is working with the Office of the Attorney General on the matter.
Stay tuned. We're back with more news after the break.
There are more ways to experience KUAM News than any other source on Guam. Download the KUAM News app for your Apple or Android device for 24/7 news, sports, videos, weather, streaming, KUAM radio, and important news alerts. And stay connected at home with Guam's first app for Apple TV. All available now from the App Store. Connect with KUAM News. Find us on your favorite social media. Connect with KUAM News. Find us on your favorite social media platform. Follow us and stay in the know with Guam's news leader.
Welcome back. Another court hearing is held in the disputed $154 million airport concessionaire contract. But this time, it wasn't the airport across the table from plaintiffs DFS, but business rival Lotte Duty Free. Superior Court Judge Arthur Barcinas is deciding whether to hear oral arguments on a series of motions that were tabled more than 2 years ago. DFS had sued Lotte for alleged interference with the prospective contract, and Lotte then countersued for alleged interference, abuse, and malicious prosecution. Lotte attorney Cesar Cabot said the motions have already been well briefed and urged the judge to dispense with oral arguments. Alternatively, he asked the judge to hold off until the Guam Supreme Court decides on the airport's appeal of the main case. Barcinas last month ruled that the airport's procurement process was, quote, fatally flawed and ordered that the concessionaire contract be rebid. The airport is asking the High Court to overturn this decision, arguing that the Barcinas decision is flawed. In the meantime, the court has allowed Lotte to remain until a new contract is awarded.
In other island news headlines, a little girl in fear after going to school following the recent school shootings in the mainland received a response from DOE's top man. Now, we told you the story about Kirsten St. Nicholas, a third grader at Wanamgro Elementary School right next to us here in Harmon. And she wrote a letter to the superintendent and the governor, afraid that an active shooter could get into her wooden classroom. So today, Superintendent John Fernandez, along with 2 DOE security officers and Guam Police Department spokesman Officer Paul Tapao, visited her school to reassure her that she is protected and her school is prepared. Superintendent Fernandez says if they had the funds, they could better secure wooden classrooms.
If we get facility funds, we can harden our schools. We can do a better job of securing, our fence lines, our gates, the building itself. And in this time of active shooter incidents that we've seen everywhere, in other parts of the country, it is right that they be concerned that their facilities are up to par. So we continue to ask for those resources.
Now, in response, Kirsten thanked them all. And though DOE personnel are not armed, Fernandez says he is confident with drills students are prepared for any scenario.
He's played a starring role in lifting up Guam's film community. Last month, award-winning filmmaker and one of the founding members of Project Inspire and Dreamstorm Productions, Justin Baldovino, passed away.
His team ensures his life's legacy continues as they are making it their mission to spread awareness on mental illness and suicide. Crystal Paco explains in our next story.
He left his family and friends with a goodbye letter. Short and sweet, he said he hadn't been himself.
Justin was such a positive impact in the community. He was such a bright individual. And if this can happen to an individual like him, what's to say anyone else in our community or in the world? And so we felt that we wanted to try to do what we can to save as many lives, because I'm sure Justin would have wanted that.
Justin Baldovino was only 24 years old. Best friend and co-founder of nonprofit Project Inspire, Neil Romero, believes the farewell message was a call to action, that they could use their talents to raise awareness and save others from themselves.
Originally, Project Inspire was turned into a nonprofit foundation to educate the next generation of filmmakers. But now we are also focusing on suicide awareness as part of it.
In 2016, there were 50 suicide deaths. That's one every week and double the previous year. According to the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center data, the incidence of suicide is 5 times greater among males than females. According to Romero, his beloved childhood friend may be gone, but he'll never be forgotten.
We were both in middle school, and we were just a couple of kids with cameras, you know, and from then on we just recorded whatever. We made short skits, short videos, and we uploaded it to YouTube, and we just kept doing that for the next couple of years, and eventually we decided, let's make a movie. We've had a very lengthy career at such a young age, from being only 12 years old and starting on this journey together.
Their efforts will now focus on public service announcements, fundraising, and hosting events to spread awareness.
Whatever we can to spread the awareness of mental health and suicide here on the island.
Reporting for Guam's News Network, I'm Crystal Paco.
I will. Now, there is help. The local hotline number is 647-8833. That number once more, 647-8833. And the Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. Both of those numbers are available on our website.
Music lovers, you are in for a treat. The Tumon Bay Music Festival is back for the 14th year. Starting tonight and running through March 10th, you can catch performances from Guam, CNMI, and Japan bands, choirs, and orchestras. Tonight and Friday's performances will feature choirs. Show starts at 6 p.m. at the Guam Plaza Resort and Spa. For more ticket information, available at tbmfguam.org.
And that is an awesome, awesome event. We invite you guys to go check that out. But please stay tuned because sports is coming up. First, here's what's happening with the weather.
We know how life